Hello friends, today I'm back with another brand design from scratch video, but I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on the packaging side of things. I'm going to be building out the branding / packaging design for a THC tea beverage. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Alex and I'm a brand designer and multimedia collage artist based in Atlanta, Georgia. I do a lot of brand design videos and other design related stuff. This is a confusing space with a really high barrier to entry, so I just like to share what I know and hopefully it will help you out a little bit. Let's jump into the brand design and packaging design. Okay, so we're gonna start with some very loose market research, very low level, very basic, just see what's out there, see what the competitors are, and see what the different approaches are. We're thinking about, who's the audience, what kind of approach are they taking, what kind of messaging are they using, what kind of aesthetic are they going for, just kind of to get a glimpse of what's out there. Usually I would do much more thorough research for a client. I would take a much deeper dive into the competitors and do more of a thoughtful analysis. You want to know what's going on in the industry, but you also want to stand out from it. So usually it just helps so that you understand kind of what's out there and so that you can distinguish your brand from existing brands. For this, I'm honestly just pulling in some different pictures of seltzers and THC infused beverages that already exist, just to kind of see what is kind of going on out there. Maybe even I'll pull in some craft beer brands just to compare. If I was really interested in doing a bit more research, I'd probably go down some different avenues and understand why someone would buy a THC seltzer, why someone would buy that over an alcohol beverage. But since I'm just doing this project for fun, I don't really want to do all of that. There's a market for them as being healthier or less harmful, I guess, than alcohol. There's a market for people who use them medically as a form of therapy. There's people who just like the experience and use it socially. And there's people who kind of like those psychoactive effects of it. But yeah, there's a lot of different angles that we could take. And I see a lot of these already touched on in other brands here just from looking at their packaging. We see some like hardcore, trippy ones, some surrealist ones, some healthy ones. Now that we've kind of done some field research and some personal ethnographic research, I'm going to make 2 different mood boards just based on different directions I think that we could take. I'm kind of deciding these based on what I see already exists and ideas that just come to mind about what direction we could take, who I think is going to buy the brand, kind of a specific person that I have in mind, like a persona almost. This is a good place to be open to different kinds of ideas and just see which ones you can flesh out a little bit more and which ones feel like they could actually come to life. And I already kind of have a feeling. I already kind of know which one I want to pick, but I'm gonna do it anyways. The first would be a more surrealist, bright, colorful direction. I liked the idea of that drink in the clouds, the surrealist one. I would probably take an angle of it being more focused on socializing, and I want it to be a bit more vibrant and have some cool elements like maybe some clouds or some floating flavor cues. I kind of feel like it would be cool if it had more pastels and gradients and kind of like a mystical aesthetic. I kind of want my second mood board to take that more granola approach. There's another persona here that we can target that's more focused on feeling grounded. Okay, so here are the 2 final mood boards. I think I'm gonna go with the one on the right just because I just see such a clear vision for it. So I'm gonna take that one and run with it. I have an idea to call it Flower Child because flower, and Flower Child is kind of hippie, granola, counterculture. So I kind of like the idea of having that be the brand name, and so that it's a little bit more about connection with nature and kind of being counterculture and counter to the norm, but also feeling very grounded and natural and earthy. I don't think I necessarily want it to be like the social hiker or like outdoorsy person, but I do want to feel like it's a brand that cultivates calm and that feels soft. I do like the idea of pulling in flowers and nature imagery as well. Given all of that, it is time to pick a font. I do want something that feels elegant and floral, but also modern and maybe kind of retro or even like psychedelic. I don't know. I don't really want to push too far into like the psychedelic territory, but you know, maybe it would be cool to play around with that just for the font and just to reflect that culture in like the 60s and 70s of the flower child hippie. So usually I find my fonts just by looking around at like fonts in use, Typewolf. Sometimes I'll just look on like Adobe fonts, or a lot of times I'll find fonts on Pinterest and I'll just follow the link directly to the font's website or like the Foundry's website. But a lot of times they have a free version that is free for personal use or just like a trial. If you are doing this for a client, just make sure that you look into the licensing, because a lot of times fonts are not free for commercial use, but they may be free for personal use. So if you're just using it for a portfolio project or whatever, you should be covered. But if you're doing this for a client, make sure you check the license of the font. So when I am looking at fonts, I just list out the name of my brand, I don't know, 6 to 10 times. And depending on my sense of direction with the project, if I already kind of know exactly what I want, then I won't have as many options to pick from, just because I am being pickier from the get-go. Okay, so here are all the different fonts that I've found. I have a couple favorites that I'm gonna try to customize / combine together to create a unique look. I really highly recommend customizing whatever font you pick. When designing your word mark or logo, you definitely don't have to use the font exactly as it was designed. I think I'm gonna do some customization and maybe try and merge a couple of these and like pull ideas from each. I really like this swoop on the F, so I'm gonna try to mimic it in the font I chose, which is called Queen's Variable. It's by Kilotype. It kind of looks like a leaf or a flower petal or something, so I feel like it would be a really great subtle touch to personalize this font and kind of indicate or like nod to flower. And I also really just like Queen's as a base font because the serif really just gives it an elegance, and it's supposed to feel really grounding and calm, and I feel like this font does a good job of capturing that. But I want to add some details that give it a little more character. I feel like if I was doing more of a psychedelic approach or surrealist approach, then I would probably pick something a little funkier. In order to customize it, I'm going to outline the letters. The shortcut is Shift-Command-O on a Mac or Shift-Control-O on a PC. And I'm working in Illustrator right now, by the way. I'm just gonna take the pencil tool and redraw this curve on the F where I want it. The shortcut for that is the N key on the keyboard. If you learn just a few shortcuts for Photoshop and Illustrator, it will completely change your workflow. And then I'm gonna repeat this with some of the other letters. But I don't wanna overdo it, so I'm just gonna pick a couple. Okay, cute. I kind of also want to try out, I know that I'm not like, here's the thing, I know that I'm not going in this direction, but I just really want to see how it would look with the kind of psychedelic wavy effect from one of the other fonts. And just try it on some of the letters, but I know that I'm not going to go in that direction because I'm not pushing the psychedelic part. I'm more pushing like a grounded approach. So yeah, but I'm just going to indulge myself for a second, okay? I feel like it could be cool if I refined it a little bit more and balanced the line weight out a little bit more, just because there's some areas that are kind of thin and it's hard to read from further away, but I do think the first design is better for my branding, which I still love it, but yeah, what could have been. Okay, now for the color palette. This is one of my favorite parts. I am gonna pull some different colors just from the mood board. I kind of had a strong sense of direction going into this mood board, and I don't always have that. I think a lot of times when I'm making a mood board, I am still developing my ideas, but I kind of knew what I wanted from the get-go. So all of the colors that I kind of want are already in this mood board, so I'm just gonna sample them and pull them into their own palette. I really love like a green shade for this, paired with like a cream beigey color and a red. I also kind of like a yellow ochre for this palette, and I really want something a bit more muted and maybe just like 1 or 2 pops of color in there for some contrast. So here are the final colors I chose because I just think they work so well together. I'm double checking each one to make sure they work in CMYK, which is especially important if you are doing packaging design. So anything that needs to be printed should be done in CMYK, and I have made this mistake before. So double make sure that your colors work in CMYK. You can just go into the color and look and see if there's a little triangle symbol and with like a little warning exclamation point. And if it is, you can just click on it and it will find you the nearest CMYK version of the color. You can also manually pick one that is in the range. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. Always make sure that your colors work in CMYK. Okay, so from my mood board, I am really obsessed with this like checker style hand stamped design, or having like a repeating stamp. And I think it would be super cool to do some linoleum printing, kind of get like a hand cut, hand drawn effect, and scan it in and vectorize it. I don't have to do this, but I want to, so I'm gonna do it. If I was on the clock, for this project and I was tracking my hours, would I do this? Probably not, but since this is for fun, I'm gonna do it. Maybe I would still do it if I was on the clock, because you know what? Maybe some people would say, why hand print it when you could just create the effect in Photoshop? But I would say the opposite. I'm gonna start with some sketches of my ideas, likely a bunch of different flowers for Flower Child, and then move on to some more formal digital versions, and then I'll print those out and transfer them to my linoleum and carve it. Okay, so I landed on these 4 designs because they all kind of have the same symmetry and similar level of detail. So I'm gonna print these out and transfer them onto my linoleum sheet using graphite paper. You kind of have to press a little hard. At least with my paper, it's a little bit old. So yeah, it's not the best, but it'll give me enough of an outline to kind of see where the shapes are, and then I'll go over it with Sharpie, which I also use mid-carve to see how the print is gonna kind of look. And you can get all of this at like a Blick or Michael's, or I would even check and see if you have a used art supply store in your area, because those are super awesome. I just really believe in doing something slow and less convenient. Convenience culture is a whole other can of worms, so I don't really want to get too far into it, but I just think there's a beauty to doing things by hand, and there's an art to hand printing and hand making things that is just lost in the design world, especially with AI and everything. I think it's really important to keep that art alive, and I just love printmaking. I do. It's so much fun for me. So yeah, it's a little bit self-indulgent, I guess, but I also do think that there's an importance in preserving the physical craft. I'm a firm believer in inconvenience. I feel like by introducing a physical aspect to this project, that it makes it really unique, and also it directly connects to the brand's personality and what I'm going for. To make it so that I can scale the designs up and down to whatever size I want, I'm gonna take photos of these prints and pull them into Illustrator and use the image trace feature to vectorize them. I'm just gonna play around with the threshold and paths until I kind of get a good balance until I get a look that I like. I'm just gonna check the ignore color box as well so that it cuts out all of the white from the photo and doesn't include that because I just want the outlines. Okay, perfect. So just for demonstration, I brought in an example die line template, which is what you use to design for print production. So it has all of the measurements on here that you would need, and you can usually design like right on top of this. There's different margins and lines that are used to designate areas that could be cut off when you're getting it printed, areas that are safe but should not have any important copy. That's where the material is going to overlap. I think the initial design can always feel a little bit overwhelming, so I am just going to start by pulling in some of my elements and just placing them and then kind of seeing how I like them before I add in any other detailed information like the nutrition facts and all that, because it feels like there's a lot to do, but I think just start one step at a time and then we'll go from there. For the first one, I think I'm gonna use the red and the beige, and I'll probably do 3 different flavors based on my color palette. So I want to try to create that checkered pattern. I'm just rearranging these until I am satisfied. If you don't have work in your portfolio that is for a client, or if you're trying to get work in a certain area and you're trying to attract new clients or get a job in a certain area, you can totally do mock projects. You can just make up a brand and design for it and just use it as an example to showcase your work and what you're capable of doing and how you think. And I'm gonna give the circle a textured outline by adding a more organic brush stroke to make it match the texture of the stamps. And then I'll just add a short description at the bottom here. I think I'm gonna call this flavor hibiscus or hibiscus strawberry or something to tie in that floral flavor, some kind of like herbal tea flavor. And I don't really know if I want to do flavor cues just because I really like the flower design, and I think it would kind of be a lot to try and combine all the flavor cues, and maybe I would do different designs within the checkered packaging for the different flavors if I had time, but I'm just a little limited on time here, so I am just gonna keep the flavor cues as the colors and try and find flavors that are similar to the colors I chose. All right, it's time to do the boring part, adding in nutrition facts. I am gonna do a little fake 21 and up symbol and have some hypothetical made up land illegal state. Different states have different symbols required for the can. You want to make sure that you're following all the FDA regulations and guidelines when you're designing packaging and stuff. I don't know the exact guidelines for THC beverages. I would look into it more if I was doing this formally. I'm just gonna do a quick mock-up of this on a random tall can mock-up that I found, but I know it's technically not the right size, so this is just for kind of a loose idea of how it's gonna look, and then I will find a better mock-up later. Okay, I love how this is looking. I think I'm gonna play around with some other designs and flavor profiles and just see if there's another layout that I like better, like a different iteration, maybe one that frames the copy differently or just has a different look to it. Do I buy a canned beverage because of its brand story, messaging, and marketing? Sure. Do I buy canned beverages because they look cute? Also yes. The world is incredibly nuanced. It's not black and white. Okay, so I want each flavor to have a different strain or intensity, and I love how this brand called TBD displays it in like a really straightforward graph. I do love this idea, but I think maybe I'll do something a little different, maybe some like bubbles that you fill in based on the intensity instead of a graph, just to be different. I think I will add in a little box as well with a description about the brand and its mission on here. I am not a copywriter, so this is not the finest writing that you'll find, but alas, there must be at least some copy on here. And we'll add in the social handles on here, maybe some descriptors for each drink in terms of the effects or like the kind of mood that it creates, like mellow versus upbeat, and make them different for each one. Now that I have my 3 final labels / flavors and I'm happy with them, I'm gonna move on to the can mock-ups in Photoshop. And I think mock-ups are like the most fun part because you really get to bring everything to life. It's like instant gratification. I found these different 12-ounce slim can mock-ups that all go together and match. So we're just gonna use those for the maximum cohesion, and I don't really feel like paying for mock-ups, so this is ideal, honestly. Mock-ups are incredibly easy. You can usually just find the layer that says your design here, double click on it, it'll open the layer in a new tab. You can just add your design, save it, go back to the original tab, and it will have updated it automatically. So I have put in the labels for all of these. And because this mockup allows it, I'm gonna customize some of the other features in it as well. So I'm gonna change the metal color a little bit, and also the pull tab, which is really cool that I can change the color of that. And then of course, the background color of the mockup. Perf. Now I'm going to mock up just one of the flavors box packaging. I just want to have some variety when I present this project, maybe show how it would be used in the outside packaging. I'm not gonna do a whole die line template for this. I'm just gonna use a mock-up. But if I was really designing this full packaging, I'd have a flat lay with die lines and everything like that, just so that it was prepared for print production. But since this is just a way of presenting the brand identity, I don't necessarily have to do all that. I like how a lot of these brands put an image of their can on the front, so it's very clear what it is. I like how the high seltzers use a flavor cue behind the can, but instead of a flavor cue, I think I'm just gonna put a hemp leaf behind instead. I feel like these other brands, they're just not really obvious enough that they're weed drinks. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be, I don't know. But maybe like the hemp leaf is kind of just taboo or whatever. I feel like the hemp leaf is just so beautiful. We don't need to shy away from it. And I think it just ties into the nature, like outdoorsy side of this brand. So I think it works great. and it just adds some texture and depth to the packaging as well. I'm just gonna add in some other minor boring details and bring over mainly just elements that I've already designed from the can. And this is the beauty of branding. You are kind of building a world. If you do it well, it makes it easy for any other designer to come pick it up and design just based off of the assets and branding that you've already created. And it should be really easy for them if you have done a good job building the foundational branding. And that's kind of the goal, especially when you're working with a small business client or whatever. You want the handoff and design to be straightforward enough and laid out well enough and communicated well enough that they can just pick it up and design it for themselves, because a lot of times clients are also the designers, which is not, you know, always ideal, but it's something that you have to think about and work with. We're not really reinventing much here, just kind of moving around existing assets and information. So here is the final packaging mock-up. It's not my favorite, but honestly, I'm just done with it at this point, so I'm ready to move on. Okay, so now just for fun, I'm gonna show you how I do a basic stop motion animation in Photoshop. It is so easy. I think it would be cool to have the can kind of spinning around 360 degrees just to show the full label that we designed. It'll kind of give it a cool 3D look as well. So I'm just gonna create a super simple, super straightforward stop motion by creating individual frames. And I'm just gonna go into the mockup and adjust the label ever so slightly, nudge it to the left or nudge it to the right in each one ever so slightly. And then I'm gonna export it, each frame. And once I merge them all together, it's gonna make it look 3D. The more frames you have, or the smaller each adjustment that you make, the smoother that the turn or animation is gonna look. And I don't know about you guys, but I just really love a good stop motion. There's just something that's so human about it. I'm okay with it not being perfectly smooth. I'm gonna pull all the frames into Photoshop as individual layers in a new document. And then I'm gonna go to Window and then Timeline, and it'll show up on the bottom bar. And then I'll click the little button that says Make Frames from Layers. And I want to make sure that the default background layer that's always in a new Photoshop document is gone and it's not one of my layers, so that it's not in my animation. So we'll get rid of that. And then I'll select all of my frames and make them all around 0.1 seconds. You can play around with the speed or length of your frames until you get kind of the speed of the animation that you like. Sometimes you do have to export it to see if you like the speed, because sometimes Photoshop just lags or just doesn't play it at the exact speed that it's supposed to be. And then once I've done all of that, I will just export it as a GIF, and an MP4, depending on where I want to use it. I have both file types. So yeah, I put them all together, and here is the final animation. So for my final presentation of the design, I want to put some flatlays of the can designs on some stock images, on some like nature background photos. So I usually find my stock images on websites like Unsplash or Raw Pixels because they're both mostly free. You can also look at Pexels or Pixabay. There's a lot of options out there, but Unsplash and Raw Pixel are my favorite, and I never like to pay for stock photos if I can avoid it. So I'm just gonna lay them out on different ones until I get the can and background combinations that I like that all work together. And when I'm doing these pairings, I'm mainly just looking to match the colors of the scenes to some of the colors from the can designs, mainly the color of the pattern on the can. I also am customizing some of these photos using the camera raw filter in Photoshop so that the colors match even more. And that's it. Super easy, just a more creative way to present the can designs that has a little bit more depth and character than just having the photos or just having the plain design itself. here are all of the final mock-ups together. I hope you love them as much as I do. I really want to drink one of these so bad. Please, please like this video and subscribe. It helps me so much. Check out my other brand design videos if you're interested in like this kind of content. Comment if you have any requests for future videos. I will see you in the next one.